We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Lebanon's teetering government was expected Monday to approve a belated economic rescue plan as the nation prepared for a fifth day of mass protests against the ruling elite.
Hong Kong police fired water cannon and tear gas Sunday as crowds held an illegal march with hardcore protesters throwing petrol bombs and thrashing businesses to cap a week of anger after recent attacks on pro-democracy demonstrators.
And Chile extends its state of emergency as the country reels from 3 days of violent demonstrations and looting that have left 7 dead and almost 1,500 detained in the worst outbreak of social unrest in decades.
And violence escalated in Barcelona protests with radical separatists hurling projectiles at police who responded with tear gas, sparking scenes of chaos in the city.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Hundreds of thousands of protesters rallied on Sunday across Lebanon to condemn official corruption and demand that the government resign on the eve of a deadline for politicians to accept a reform package. They were the largest rallies yet. In a wave of protests that have gripped the Mediterranean country, the biggest such movement in years, which brought to a standstill the capital Beirut, second city Tripoli, and other major towns. The demonstrations have crippled the country and threatened the government of beleaguered Prime Minister Saad Hariri, who has given cabinet members until Monday to support his reform plan. We have a report coming in from our Lebanon bureau. Here's Gurley Salazar.
Thousands of Lebanese outraged by corruption and proposed tax hikes protest in downtown Beirut as the largest demonstration in years threatened the country's fragile coalition government. Lebanon's current demonstrations are believed to be the country's biggest since 2015, as protesters seek to highlight deteriorating living conditions, austerity measures, capital flight, and the rise of the deficit and public debt. The heavily indebted Lebanese government unveiled several new measures to raise the revenue in an attempt to balance their large budget deficit on Thursday, which helped spark the protest. They included a tax of 20 cents per day for calls made through the voice-over internet protocol, such as WhatsApp and Facebook calls. The proposal was later withdrawn. The government scrapped the proposal within hours, but the demonstrations carried on into the night. Lebanon also suffers from the constant electricity shortage and poor internet. Growth has plummeted in recent years, with political deadlock compounded by the impact of 8 years of war in neighboring Syria. On Thursday, the International Monetary Fund forecast a continuation of weak growth in 2019. Lebanon's public debt stands at around $86 billion, more than 150% of gross domestic product, according to the Finance Ministry. Reporting from Beirut, Lebanon, this is Gurley Salazar, and I am one with 25.
Hong Kong's pro-Beijing leader and the city's police chief visited a mosque on Monday that was struck with blue dye from a water cannon during the latest bout of violent protests. The entrance to the Kowloon Mosque, the international hub's largest, was sprayed by a water cannon truck on Sunday, causing anger among both local Muslims and protesters. Police use the dye, often mixed with an irritant, as a way to identify protesters, but it has frequently left streets and buildings daubed in garish blue. Police released a statement on Sunday saying the mosque was hit by mistake but did not apologize. On Monday, Chief Executive Carrie Lam and Police Chief Stephen Lowe paid a brief visit to the mosque surrounded by a phalanx of security guards. Mosque representatives told reporters that the two had apologized for the water cannon incident and that the apology had been accepted. Hong Kong was convulsed by another day of violence on Sunday as the city nears 5 months of seething pro-democracy protests. Tens of thousands joined an unauthorized but peaceful afternoon rally which quickly descended into chaos as small groups of hardcore protesters threw petrol bombs and rocks at a police station, mainland China businesses and multiple subway station entrances. Police responded with water cannon, tear gas and rubber bullets in clashes that lasted well into the night.
Meanwhile, more protests, this time in Barcelona, with radical separatists hurling projectiles at police who responded with tear gas. That sparked the scenes of chaos in the city. The violence came over Spain's move to convict 9 separatist leaders of sedition over a failed independence bid 2 years ago. Our EBC correspondent is at the scene. Here's Lynn Tumbaga Diez.
Barcelona antifascista! Barcelona antifascista!
After days of series of rallies in Barcelona, the city seems to be back to normal. Business as usual. Again, the roads open and public transport is available. Members of CDR, or Committee for the Defense of the Republic, and hundreds of students participated on the Freedom March as a response to the verdict of Supreme Court to the imprisonment of Catalan separatist leaders. But the traces of chaos cannot be denied because of damaged bus stops, street signs, burned barricades, and trash bins. The protest rallies that lasted for 5 consecutive days caused damages in public properties. The peaceful rallies in the mornings ended with violence at night, as the tension between protesters and anti-riot police heats up. Most of all, many were injured in the fight between police and protesters. But the rallies in Barcelona did not end. In fact, as of the writing of this news, more rallies were being carried out. Saturday night, protesters gathered again on the streets of Barcelona, followed by political rally on Sunday. Meanwhile, in Madrid, there were pro-amnesty demonstrations. Like in Barcelona, it ended up in violent encounters between protesters and policemen.
From Barcelona, Spain, I'm Lynn Tumbaga Diez, and I'm 1 with 25.
5 people died Sunday when a garment factory was torched by looters near Chile's capital Santiago, bringing the death toll in a wave of unrest to 7 as authorities expanded a state of emergency. Almost all public transport was paralyzed in Santiago, shops were shut, and many flights canceled at the international airport. It left thousands of people stranded and unable to leave due to the curfew. After an emergency meeting late Sunday, President Sebastián Pinera suspended the increase in subway fares, the initial spark for the mass protests.
Que en el día de hoy he enviado al Congreso un proyecto de ley que va a permitir suspender el incremento de las tarifas del metro, hasta que encontremos una fórmula que permita proteger mejor los derechos de los ciudadanos frente a alzas bruscas o inesperadas del tipo de cambio o del petróleo, que son los que están detrás de esa alza de tarifas. Hemos establecido el estado de emergencia en 4 regiones del país en 5 regiones del país: la región metropolitana, la región de Valparaíso, del Biobío, de Coquimbo y de O'Higgins, que hemos invocado la ley de seguridad del Estado, no contra los ciudadanos, no contra los que legítimamente se manifiestan porque están en su derecho. Y además, yo comprendo y comparto sus preocupaciones.
Authorities reported 103 serious incidents throughout the country, with 1,462 people detained, 614 in Santiago, and 848 in the rest of the country. Protesters set fire to buses, smashed up metro stations, knocked down traffic lights, ransacked shops, and clashed with riot police in Santiago and other cities. Canada is gearing up for federal elections, and conservatives and liberals are neck and neck in the polls. But in the Prairie province of Saskatchewan, support Andrew Scheer and the Tories is steadfast, centered around the fate of the oil and gas industry. And many voters here feel the last 4 years of Justin Trudeau's Liberal government, with the stricter environmental policies it has rolled out, has hurt them.
Our kids going through school for geology, and his future, I'm hoping, will look better. I'm hoping there'll be more of a push for getting that pipeline going to the States. So that's the general gist of it all. And in general, we're not happy with the present government right now.
I'd like to see the oil and gas back up, because Trudeau's trying to shut it all down, and he's even got American people here that are fighting against us, and that's wrong. We should get along with everybody and not have somebody other digging into our stuff, because it's ours. Like, they even got people from Europe coming over here slamming us, and that's wrong. And that's what the Liberal platform is. It's no good.
Though Saskatchewan isn't the country's top oil-producing province, it accounts for roughly 12% of Canadian oil output, compared to neighboring Alberta's nearly 80%, but the industry is crucial to the region's economy. For Andrew Spaggrid, CEO of Villanova Energy, when it comes to the elections, he says the choice is obvious.
I've kind of always been a conservative type, someone who lets the economy, a healthy economy, fund social programming and all those kind of things. But, you know, in the last 4 years, it's really become obvious what the conservative type of government can do for the industry. We've been in a 4-year cycle of, I'm going to call it, we've been getting beat up. Like, the industry's just in this state of disrepair. We're getting regulatory issues are causing our industry to really suffer versus our peer countries. But once I did get into the industry or a career and started paying bills and mortgages and stuff like that, that's when it really becomes part of your day-to-day life and really becomes more obvious. And ever since then, obviously, I came right into the oil and gas industry. I'm from Western Canada, which is traditionally conservative, so it's kind of been ingrained in me even before I was starting to pay attention to it.
In April, Trudeau's government rolled out a starting carbon tax of 20 Canadian dollars per ton of carbon dioxide emitted, affecting 4 provinces that had not fallen in line with the Prime Minister's emissions reduction strategy. That tax is scheduled to increase incrementally to 50 Canadian dollars over the coming years to discourage the use of large amounts of fossil fuels. The ideological divide over the tax is playing out in courtrooms and legislatures across the country, with Saskatchewan taking the lead in fighting it to the Supreme Court, and it figures unsurprisingly in election party platforms.
People out here who are conservative, or conservative people in general, it's very difficult for us to have conversations with the other side of the spectrum, right? Because things are so personal, because it's impacting our way of life, it's impacting our finances, really, our economies out here, and obviously that's a big deal. Like, when I go to bed at night, I think about providing for my family, what things are going to look like in 1 year, 5 years, 15 years. And right now, all of that, it looks kind of scary. What's progressing, our economy is suffering. I think there's potential for this country to dip into a recession. So what's progressing and what issues are progressing, and I know the economy is suffering. So for me, it doesn't feel progressive. It feels the opposite of that.
Despite a global wave of climate activism, Scheer has said, as Prime Minister, he would repeal the carbon tax and other environmental protections. Scheer will become Prime Minister if Conservatives win 170 seats or more, though experts predict no party will earn a majority in this election.
Eagle News, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Tungkulin ng MTRCB ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng
digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Hey guys, I'm here in New Jersey, the diner capital of the world. Tune in to Digital Nest on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. I'm Nikki, and I'm 1 with 25.
With just over a year remaining before the 2020 U.S. presidential elections, there are still more than a dozen candidates vying for the Democratic Party's nomination. Hawaii correspondent Mio Cenas focuses on one of the youngest candidates who's struggling to stay the course while confronted with recent resistance from her own party and her own constituents. Mio?
Well, wow. I was a little bit shocked by that statement. I feel like Tulsi Gabbard is still a freshman legislator.
I believe that she has the passion, the respect, the confidence, the care, and also the aloha to run for the country's top job.
Tulsi Gabbard's political career began right here in Hawaii State Capitol in 2002. Fast forward 2 decades later, she's setting her sights on the highest office in the nation.
Born in American Samoa in 1981, Tulsi was elected to the Hawaii State House when she was just 21 years old, becoming the youngest person ever elected in the Aloha State. A year later, she enlisted in the Hawaii Army National Guard, and in 2004, Gabbard volunteered to deploy in Iraq, becoming the first state official to voluntarily step down from public office to serve in a combat zone. She still serves in Hawaii Army National Guard, holding the rank of major. In 2010, Tulsi Gabbard was elected to the Honolulu City Council. 2 years later, she was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. serving Hawaii's 2nd District, which includes all the neighbor islands and areas outside of Honolulu. She became one of the first 2 female combat veterans to ever serve in the U.S. Congress, as well as the first Samoan and also the first Hindu member. In 2016, she gained recognition on the national stage when she stepped down as vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee in order to support the presidential campaign of Senator Bernie Sanders. In January of this year, during an interview with CNN, Tulsi Gabbard announced that she would challenge Donald Trump for president in 2020. Here are some mixed reaction from Hawaii residents.
I would say that less than 25% of the country knows who Tulsi Gabbard really is. She is a very smart woman. She has come very far very quickly, but still I feel that to be a president of the United States, you need to have a lot more seasoning amongst your constituents. I think she's done a good job here in Hawaii. I'm only disappointed that she would not debate other candidates. So that has always bothered me a little bit, but I have voted for her in the past.
Representative Gabbard knows about protecting our economy. What industry drives Hawaii's economy? It's the tourism industry that creates job opportunities for small businesses to grow. If you remember back in October 2018, Representative Gabbard joined the workers of Waikiki Hotel Union Local 5 at the picket line. She believes that because the cost of living here in Hawaii is pretty high, people should not be working 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet. She's an original co-sponsor of the Raise the Wage Act. That means she supported legislation to raise the federal minimum wage while she is still in Congress. Representative Gabbard continues to work day in and day out just to ensure that we have a sustainable economy that will help the people of Hawaii.
According to a recent survey by Public Policy Polling based in North Carolina, registered Democratic voters in Gabbard's own congressional district believe that, quote, she should drop out of the race and that she's likely to have trouble winning the nomination for another term in the next House next year, end of quote. Hawaii State Senator and fellow Democrat Kai Kahele is currently challenging Gabbard's congressional seat in Hawaii's 2nd District. A couple of weeks later, during a podcast interview, former Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton claimed that Russia has, quote, an eye on somebody who is currently in the Democratic primary and grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians, end of quote. Gabbard immediately responded with a series of video and written tweets, including this one.
People warned me in 2016 that my endorsement of Bernie Sanders would be the end of my quote-unquote political career. They said Clinton will never forget that she and her rich and powerful friends, her allies in politics and in the media, will make sure that you are destroyed. They've tried to destroy my reputation and my lifetime of service because I stood up to them. I've spent over 16 years of my life proudly serving in the Army National Guard. I still serve as a major today. But if they can falsely portray me as a traitor, then they can do it to anyone. And in fact, that's exactly the message that they want to get across to you. They will not intimidate us. They will not silence us. We are not here just to protest their corruption. I am running for president to take the Democratic Party and our country back from the corrupt elite. I'm running for president to bring about a new Democratic Party and new leadership that will fight for peace, fight for the people, and protect our planet. So I want to ask every single one of you to join me in speaking truth to power. Don't be afraid. Let's root out the corruption in our party and our country. Join me to end the war machine's stranglehold over our leaders and ensure that our government is truly of the people, by the people, and for the people.
At present, Tulsi Gabbard trails behind front-runners like former Vice President Joe Biden, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. The first primary elections will be the Iowa caucuses on February 3, 2020. Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Mio Senos for Eagle News, 1 with 25.
Malacanang confirmed that President Duterte will be among 400 heads of states and members of royal families attending the enthronement of Japanese Emperor Naruhito. Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo said the president will be attending the emperor's enthronement ceremony at the Imperial Palace in Tokyo on October 22, despite earlier announcements that he will be skipping it to prioritize work.
Ang alam ko, attention ng enthronement proper, and then we have the emperor's banquet, and the prime minister's banquet. Yun, yung tatlong yun. Ang alam ko 22 yung yung rites. And then emperor's banquet din the same, 22. 23 yata yung prime minister banquet.
He beard that President Duterte decided to attend the emperor's enthronement since he believes it is important to honor Japan as an important partner. Panelo pointed out that although the Duterte administration has pursued an independent foreign policy, it greatly values the diplomatic ties between Philippines and Japan. He said Japan is the Philippines' second major trading partner and fourth biggest source and market for Philippine tourism. During President Duterte's third and last visit to Japan last May, Panelo also noted that there were 26 business agreements with an estimated investment value of 288 billion pesos, or that's $5.5 billion signed, which are projected to create 82,737 jobs in the country. He said the signing of these business agreements showed Japan's vote of confidence in the president's method of governance and in its country's economic prospects. Japan has also been the largest official development assistance or ODA provider to the Philippines by contributing to infrastructure development, including the Japan-backed Metro Manila subway. Moreover, Panelo said Japan has also assisted the Philippines in peace and development efforts in Mindanao, such as the rehabilitation of Marawi City. A report from Nikkei Asian Review said, to date, 174 countries accepted the invitations to attend the emperor's enthronement, according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
China's defense minister made an uncompromising call Monday for the reunification of Taiwan with the mainland, telling a high-level defense forum that the process was something no force could stop. Self-ruled Taiwan is viewed by China as a renegade province which will eventually be unified with the mainland by force if necessary after the two sides split in 1949 after a civil war. China will not stop in its efforts towards realizing the complete reunification of the motherland, according to Defense Minister General Wei Fenghe told defense ministers and officials from across Asia at the Shangjian Forum in Beijing. He said China is the only big country in the world that has not yet achieved complete reunification. He said it is something that nobody and no force can stop. Relations between Taipei and Beijing have deteriorated since the 2016 election of President Tsai Ing-wen, whose party refuses to accept that Taiwan is part of one China.
The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces fully withdrew from a Turkish encircled town in northern Syria Sunday in what appeared to be the start of a wider pullout under a ceasefire deal. Ankara launched a cross-border attack against Syria's Kurds on October 9 after the United States announced a military pullout from the north of the war-torn country. A U.S.-brokered ceasefire was announced late Thursday, giving Kurdish forces until Tuesday evening to withdraw from a buffer area Ankara wants to create inside Syrian territory along its southern frontier. The deal requires the SDF, the de facto armies of Kurdish authorities in northeastern Syria, to pull out of a border zone 32 kilometers deep into Syrian territory, the length of which is not clear. The Kurds have agreed to withdrawing from a stretch of 120 kilometers from the Tal Abyad to Ras Al Ain. But Turkey ultimately wants a much longer safe zone to stretch 440 kilometers along the frontier. On Saturday, SDF Commander Mazloum Abdi said Kurdish forces would withdraw from the 120-kilometer zone as soon as they were allowed out of Ras Al Ain, which was besieged by Turkish troops and its Syrian proxies. The departure from Ras Al Ain came a day after a medical convoy managed to evacuate wounded from the hospital. The Kurds have been a key ally to Washington in the U.S.-backed fight against the Islamic State group in Syria, but Turkey views them as terrorists linked to Kurdish militants on its own soil. Earlier this month, U.S. President Donald Trump said U.S. special forces would be withdrawn from northern Syria in what was widely seen as betrayal of the Kurds and a green light for a Turkish attack. A week ago, the Pentagon said Trump had ordered up to 1,000 troops out of northern Syria. The observatory said earlier Sunday, U.S. forces withdrew from their largest base in northern Syria. Abdel Rahman said Sunday's pullout was the fourth such withdrawal of American forces in a week and left Syria's northern provinces of Aleppo and Raqqa devoid of U.S. troops. Since October 9, Turkish-led bombardment and fire has killed 114 civilians and displaced at least 300,000 people from their homes, the observatory says in the latest humanitarian crisis in Syria's 8-year civil war.
In other news, Indonesia's President Joko Widodo was sworn in for a second term on Sunday. Take a look. Foreign heads of state, lawmakers, and political rivals looked on as Widodo, 58, and Vice President Maruf Amin, 76, read an oath to start a 5-year tenure leading the world's biggest Muslim-majority nation. Widely known as Jokowi, the president said his final term would be aimed at eradicating poverty and catapulting the nation of some 260 million into a developed country with one of the world's top 5 economies by 2045.
Bapak Profesor Dr. Kiai Haji, 5 tahun ke depan yang ingin kita kerjakan, yang pertama adalah pembangunan sumber daya manusia. Pembangunan SDM akan menjadi prioritas utama kita. Membangun SDM yang pekerja keras, yang dinamis, membangun SDM yang terampil, yang menguasai ilmu pengetahuan dan teknologi, mengundang talent-talent global untuk bekerja sama dengan kita. Tahun 2045, pada 1 abad Indonesia merdeka, mestinya, insya Allah, Indonesia telah keluar dari jebakan pendapatan kelas menengah. Indonesia telah menjadi negara maju.
Jokowi, a popular heavy metal-loving former businessman from outside the political and military elite, was hailed as Indonesia's answer to Barack Obama when he was first elected in 2014, partly on a roads to airports infrastructure drive. But his leadership has been under mounting criticism after a wave of crisis that threatened to cast a shadow over his final term. Challenges facing the president range from nationwide anti-government demonstrations in which 3 students died and smog belching forest fires that sparked diplomatic tensions with Indonesia's neighbors to deadly unrest in Papua province and a slowdown in Southeast Asia's biggest economy. Jokowi's inauguration comes a little over a week after the country's chief security minister, Wiranto, was stabbed in an attack by 2 members of a local extremist outfit allied to the Islamic State group.
Two Thai women and a Frenchman could face the death penalty after they were caught smuggling meth into Bali, the Indonesian holiday island's customs agency said Monday. The Thai nationals, identified as Kasarin Kamkau and Sanika Manits, arrived last week on a flight from Bangkok, and suspicious airport officials found nearly a kilogram of methamphetamine hidden under their clothes, authorities said. A lab test confirmed all the packages contained methamphetamine weighing 958 grams in total. Himawan Indarjono, head of immigration at Bali's International Airport, told reporters Monday. The pair, a janitor and an operator of a motorcycle rental shop in Thailand, could face a firing squad if convicted in the Muslim-majority nation, which has some of the world's toughest drug laws. Separately, Frenchman Olivier Houver was arrested in Bali after a package sent from his home country containing some 22.5 grams of meth arrived at the airport with his address on it, according to authorities. Authorities said he faces a long jail term or the death penalty. Russian beautician Tatiana Firsova, who allegedly tried to smuggle in 6.6 grams of meth, was arrested after arriving in Bali on a flight from Doha last week. She faces up to 15 years if convicted. The four suspects, wearing orange prison jumpsuits, were paraded together in front of reporters Monday, a common practice in Indonesia. While death sentences are often reduced to long jail terms, Indonesia has executed foreign nationals in the past, including two Australian masterminds of the Bali 9 heroin gang who were shot in 2015. More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns. Stay tuned.
Net25 is now available on OSN, the largest entertainment network in the Middle East and North Africa.
Watch your favorite Net25 shows on OSN Channel 725, same day as the Philippines.
Net25 shows live and on demand anytime, anywhere,
on any mobile device on OSN Play.
Agila Balita, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 7:30 hanggang alas 8 ng umaga.
A defiant British government has doubled down, insisting it will leave the European Union in 11 days, despite Parliament's forcing a reluctant Prime Minister to request another delay. On a day of high drama on Saturday, MPs in the House of Commons passed up the chance to decide on the revised withdrawal agreement that Prime Minister Boris Johnson had negotiated with the European Union. Let's listen in.
Been a very important debate, an exceptional moment for our country, an exceptional moment for our Parliament. Alas, the opportunity to have a meaningful vote has effectively been passed up because the meaningful vote has been voided of meaning. And I will continue to do all I can to get Brexit done on October the 31st, and I continue to commend this excellent deal, Mr. Speaker, to the House.
The Prime Minister must now comply with the law. He can no longer use the threat of a no-deal crash-out to blackmail members to support his sellout deal.
Now, EU leaders were on Sunday considering a request by Prime Minister Boris Johnson to delay Britain's departure from the bloc, which he was forced to make after MPs refused to back his Brexit deal. The Conservative leader duly sent a letter to European Council President Donald Tusk late Saturday asking for the required 3-month delay, but did not sign it. He sent a second letter, signed, warning that a further extension would damage the interests of the UK and our EU partners. A defiant Prime Minister Johnson had earlier told the MPs, quote, "I will not negotiate a delay with the EU." Donald Tusk said he would begin consulting EU leaders on how to react, a process one diplomat said could take a few days. Prime Minister Johnson has already spoken to the leaders of France, Germany, and the Netherlands to press his case. And Paris had warned on Saturday that a Brexit delay was in nobody's interest. Meanwhile, an expert has explained what will happen in the next few days after British MPs voted to demand Boris Johnson delay Brexit while they further consider his EU divorce deal. Let's listen in.
Parliament today decided not to approve the Prime Minister's deal as he asked, but instead to say that they would withhold approving his deal until the legislation implementing it was passed. And the effect of that is that the Prime Minister has this evening to write a letter to the European Union asking for an extension till 31st of January 2020. So what now happens, we think, is that the government is going to make another attempt next week to get approval for its deal in principle, because MPs haven't yet had a chance to express their views. That's likely to come on Monday, and then on Tuesday the government has said it's going to introduce the bill to try and implement that deal, so the so-called Withdrawal Agreement Bill, and it has to pass that before it can ratify the treaty for the UK to leave the EU. So people think the numbers are very close, that he might just be able to squeak over the line by 1 or 2 votes. The interesting thing then is that even if he can get that agreement in principle, is he's likely to face a lot of pressure on the bill itself, potentially a lot of amendments going down to that pieces of legislation from members of Parliament who want to change it, maybe a press for a second referendum, things like that. So we'll have to wait to see till next week to see if we can get over those 2 big hurdles.
The pound hit a fresh 5-month peak above $1.30 Monday on renewed Brexit optimism after Prime Minister Boris Johnson requested another extension to Britain's scheduled departure from the European Union. At about 08:30 GMT, the pound reached the highest level since May at $1.3012. It later stood at $1.2984, unchanged from late in New York on Friday. The euro was stable at 85.99 pence. Markets starting to price in a best-case scenario in terms of the deal getting passed this week, and then a short extension to pass any necessary legislation, CMC markets analyst Michael Hewson told AFP. Whether that optimism turns out to be premature is another matter. Only time will tell.
The longest non-stop passenger flight touched down in Australia Sunday morning after more than 19 hours in the air. A milestone journey from New York that Qantas hopes to parlay into commercial success.
Qantas 7879, we really appreciate your help tonight.
Qantas flight QF7879 took 19 hours and 16 minutes to fly direct from New York to Sydney, in the first of 3 ultra-long-haul journeys planned by the airline this year. The national flag carrier is operating the test flights, which also include one from London to Sydney, as it weighs a rollout of regular services on marathon routes from the United States and Britain to Australia. Just 49 people traveled on to the Boeing 7879 to minimize the weight on board and give the plane sufficient fuel range to travel more than 16,000 kilometers without refueling. Qantas CEO Alan Joyce called it a really historic moment for both the airline and world aviation.
Really appreciate your...
It's got the world's attention, so we know that demand is there, we know people are interested in it, we know people want to fly these and save the time. So we want to make this a reality by 2023 from New York and from London, and maybe from a lot of other destinations in Europe and North America that we can't reach in one stop today.
We're researching the effects of the long flights, the ultra long haul flying on our crews. We're getting a lot of data that's going to be analysed over the coming weeks and months. That flight last night was 16,200 kilometres. We were airborne for 19 hours and 16 minutes, and we landed here in Sydney with a comfortable 70 minutes of fuel. So there was no doubt, and that was also against stronger headwinds than we'd actually forecast. So that was a success.
Qantas 7879, we really appreciate your...
Qantas partnered with two Australian universities to monitor how jet lag affected the health of passengers and crew members as they crossed multiple time zones. After boarding the flight, passengers set their watches to Sydney time and were kept awake until night fell in eastern Australia with lighting, exercise, caffeine, and a spicy meal 6 hours later. They were served a high carbohydrate meal, told to avoid screens, and the lights were deemed to encourage them to sleep through the night. Professor Marie Carroll, a researcher from Sydney University who conducted the experiment, told AFP that she expected the innovative approach would result in absolutely minimal jet lag.
I'm feeling wonderful. I'm feeling wonderful because I followed the passengers, the advice to the passengers, which was to immediately go on to Sydney time the moment we stepped on the plane in New York. Set our watches to Sydney time, which turned out to be noon yesterday, and to behave as if it was daytime. We kept the lights on, the cabin lights on. This was a really, really big change from normal aviation. The lights stayed on until Sydney would be dark. We did special exercises in the cabin, group exercises, to refresh and revive the passengers. We had special hydration advice.
The four pilots on board who rotated between flying duties also wore devices that track their brainwaves and alertness. The Australian and International Pilots Association, which represents Qantas pilots, has raised concerns about whether pilots will get enough quality rest during ultra-long-range flights to maintain peak performance. It has called for a scientific long-term study into the impacts on crews. The airline also said the test journeys are just one facet of the work it's doing to ensure the flights are operated safely.
South Africa shattered Japan's dreams of reaching the World Cup semi-finals with a pulsating 26-3 victory in Tokyo Sunday to set up a blockbuster last four clash with Wales. A double from Wing Makazole Mapimpi broke the hearts of the Brave Blossoms, whose run to the knockout stages has earned respect around the rugby world and lit up the first World Cup held in Asia. Japan famously beat South Africa 34-32 at the last World Cup in an upset dubbed the Miracle of Brighton, but Sunday's match at Tokyo was far more comfortable for the two-time world champions. South Africa now advanced to the semi-finals to play Wales, who pipped France 2019 earlier Sunday after Le Bleu went down to 14 men. The 2019 Rugby World Cup, which is taking place in Asia for the first time ever, is being held in Japan from September 20 to November 2.
I just think you can. It's obvious with a team that everyone is connected, and we understand that everyone has a role within the group. And if we can do that job to the best of our abilities, then we're going to be successful. And that's been really the trademark of this team, and crucial that we carry on the same way. I'm grateful for the players. It takes a long time to get coordinated. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time to build trust. But when you do build trust and finally when that comes all together, then you can achieve really great things.
Rugby has obviously really raised its profile in Japan in the last month especially, and hopefully that means that a lot more kids are going to play rugby, a lot more people are aware of the sport and will support the sport, and it means great growth for rugby as a sport in Japan.
相手ボールのスクラムをプレッシャーをかけてターンオーバーしたシーンですかね。今まで日本代表相手ボールに対してプレッシャーをかけて ペナルティを取るっていうのはなかなかできていなくて、それをティア1のアイルランド相手にできるんだっていうことを証明できた試合でしたし。
And in golf, Tiger Woods says his fitness is ahead of schedule after arthroscopic knee surgery. Woods is in Japan this week to play in the U.S. PGA Tour's inaugural Zozo Championship, a $9.75 million event that's the second tournament of an almost $30 million Asian swing. Woods is in Japan this week to play in the U.S. PGA Tour's inaugural championship, the Zozo Championship. He intends to end his year by playing in the Hero World Challenge beginning December 4 before going to Australia to captain Team USA in the President's Cup a week later. Woods, who completed a remarkable return from years of injury and personal problems to win the U.S. Masters in April, said his knee had been giving him more pain as the year wore on.
And it progressively got worse and got to where it was affecting even reading putts. You can see it towards the end of the year that I wasn't quite getting down on my putts well, and having it done, it was unfortunately I've been down this road before with knee rehabs and knew the protocols. The whole idea was to be ready for this event and be ready for the Hero and possibly Australia. So. Had it done, and as I said, it's been nice to be able to squat down, read putts, and start going at it full speed again. I wanted to be fit and ready for the end of the year, and I've been kind of battling through this entire year and trying to piece it together, and it's been nice to finally get over the hump and start feeling good again and start going at it full speed. It would be an honor to represent my country in Olympic Games. Right now I'm 9th in the world rankings, and hopefully next year I can have a good year and qualify and represent my country.
Filipinos won in the recent first Port Moresby Open Chess Tournament, which coincided with the 44th independence anniversary of Papua New Guinea. Echo Hortaleza Quinola reports.
Checkmate. This word was uttered by the Filipinos who competed in the Open Chess Tournament held in Ella Beach Hotel, Port Moresby.
The Ramu Agri Industries, one of the biggest companies in Papua New Guinea, sponsored the first Port Moresby Open Chess Tournament, which coincided with the 44th independence anniversary of Papua New Guinea. The tournament was joined by hundreds of players, amateurs, and professionals from different age categories. The competition ran as Swiss pairing, and all players played at least 5 matches. They solved simple to complex moves. In the professional level, engineer Pablo de Guia Jr. and Christopher Nava was declared champions.
The winning formula is practice, practice, and practice. But of course, you must focus on the board, not with your opponent, as well as you must enjoy the game. Well, I'm inspired on that game, and every game that I won, it boosts my confidence level and my pride as a Filipino, that even in this part of the world, we are able to show that Filipinos are competitive in every aspect of the game. To my Filipino kababayan, the Philippines, I feel proud that I represented our home country in this simple tournament, and I encourage those people who love to play chess to continue playing chess, enjoy the game.
Engineer Lerny Soriano and Jenny Sunico landed as first runners-up. In the inter-school competition, a grade 8 student, Johnny Croliv Hortaleza Quinola, emerged as second runner-up, while Jed Quinola and Joral Quinola got high achievements.
I'm happy to be the third placer in the inter-school chess competition, and I am proud to be a Filipino.
The tournament improved the players' chess skills and sportsmanship.
Reporting from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, this is Echo Hortaleza Quinola and I am on with 25.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you, Echo. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also, check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, I'm Alma Angeles, and
we're one with 25.